on the front lines of the information war. It's Alex Jones.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. Leanne McAdoo will be joining us in the next segment. I want to talk about what the Vatican is doing in terms of opposing Trump. Remember, we had the 30-minute meeting that Donald Trump took with the Pope. They had a quiet face-to-face meeting. It had been pretty contentious before that. Remember, during the election, we had the Pope criticizing, calling unchristian the idea that we would have borders. The Pope is an open border socialist world government, and he wants the world government to save the climate and so forth. That's where this guy's coming from. Total New World Order Pope. He is the religious, ethical face that the New World Order is using to sell this agenda. And so even though they had that meeting, now the Vatican press has lashed out at Catholic Trump voters and calls Steve Bannon a supporter of apocalyptic geopolitics. This is from Zero Hedge. Listen to some of the quotes from this. This is a Jesuit priest who's the editor of this Vatican publication. He had a 2,700-word paper that he put out this week. And he said there was a surprising meeting of minds between some Catholic voters in the U.S. and the evangelical Christian right. So he's upset about the fact that conservative Catholics and evangelical Christians come together on things like abortion and same-sex marriage. He said they harbor a nostalgic dream of a theocratic type of state. Well, we know that the Vatican is selling their dream of a secular humanist world government. He said those who profess themselves to be Catholic express themselves in ways that until recently were unknown in their tradition, and they're using tones that are much closer to evangelicals. He said they're xenophobic, they're Islamophobic, they want walls, they want deportation. See, this is the globalism that is now endemic in the Vatican. So some conservative Catholics have been outraged by the piece. One conservative Catholic blog said that due to the unprecedented nature and the direct attack that it makes on the United States, its current administration, American evangelicals, conservative Catholics in the United States and Europe and Africa, combined with the rise of Islamism, the article's overreach is nothing if not breathtaking. And of course, the Pope is going to continue his anti-Trump, pro-globalist agenda. Just remember when they came out with this climate encyclical, one of the four guys who wrote it, was a guy, John Schellenhuber. He is a German climate expert, a self-appointed expert. But this is a guy who rejoices in the fact that if we don't do anything, the whole world is going to melt down and our population is going to be reduced from 7 to under 1 billion people. That's going to be more than an 85% reduction. So he's happy about that. He said that's a triumph for us because we could stabilize our population. And this is a guy who has proposed that we have a global democratic society. He wants an Earth Constitution. He wants a global council. He wants a planetary court that they can haul you before. And understand, as we see Macron meeting with Donald Trump, it was very important for Donald Trump to get out of that Paris climate agreement. We never were really in. We had Obama say he was going to self-ratify that. He was going to sign it because he knew that the Congress is not going to ratify that agreement. But it was important to shut that thing down. And in response, we had Macron come out and say, well, in 22 years, we will ban all internal combustion engines, which 99% of the French people choose over electric. Only 1% of the people in France buy electric cars. They're going to shut that down. And at the same time, they're going to shut down the sources of electricity. They're going to shut down fossil fuels and even nuclear power. That's why I say Macron needs to grow up. This guy is on another planet. He thinks that he referred to himself as Jupiter. I mean, seriously, we're not making this up. This guy is major delusional. So is Al Gore, saying that the fight to save the planet is like the fight to end slavery. No, it is a social agenda, and people admit that. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Leanne McAdoo. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. On this Friday, July 14th, 2017, we're going to be joined by Leanne McAdoo, who's been on extended leave. She's in Florida, so she's joining us via Skype. We'll talk about election issues, but we also want to talk about health issues. We had a story earlier this week pointing out that in the UK, you're more likely to get cancer than you are to get married or to have children for the first time. Just as likely to have cancer than to get a college degree. It's becoming something of a rite of passage for all of us. And it's because of what we have in our food and our water. So Leanne has a report about glyphosate. Welcome, Leanne.
David, great to be here. That's incredible, the story you just brought up about cancer being the new normal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's increasing as birth rates are going down. That's another part of this as well. It's not just, they want to tell us that that's simply societal changes, that people want to have careers, they're delaying having children and everything, but it's also the chemicals that they're putting in the water make it difficult for people once they decide they want to have kids to have kids. And so that's a big part of the plummeting number of children that people are having, but this cancer thing. Tell us a little bit about this report, and let's play this report for people.
Well, this is actually a story that Rob Dew sent to my attention, a positive story, another win, another victory for the consumer. We've got a new tool to help us choose wisely at the grocery store and other places. Obviously, the Non-GMO Project is a great label to look for, but now we can start looking for a glyphosate residue-free food label. So there's actually a number of products on the market right now that have already kind of paved the way for products like your cooking oils and your mayonnaise, your condiments, things like that that people don't really think about, but we use all the time with every meal, essentially. So it's a glyphosate residue-free certification. It's a new label that you can begin to look for. And it's a really positive thing as well, because it's going to start pushing farmers, say in India, to go more organic and to get away from these pesticide-laden foods and genetically modified frankenfoods that they are pushing on us in their great big science experiment, and then, of course, pushing this narrative that cancer is totally normal.
Yeah, they just put up an article, as you were talking, about a Tennessee area that put restrictions on the use of glyphosate. And that's something that people need to realize. I always thought about it living in a rural area. We filter our water because even though you don't have somebody adding fluoride to your water, if you've got well water, you have people who are growing agricultural products. If they're using glyphosate, that gets down into the well water that you're going to have. But you're talking about it being systemic in all of these different products that you don't even think about. You think about it being in water, but you don't realize that it's in so many other products. Let's take a quick look at your report, and we'll talk about that afterwards.
There's a new tool in the arsenal when it comes to taking back your health. A company is now going to make it easier than ever for you to avoid pesticides when choosing your food products. They are introducing the new glyphosate residue-free food labeling, and this is all thanks to that consumer-based push for transparency. Chosen Foods and Heavenly Organics are two food makers that already have several products out on the market. But the director of the Detox Project, who is the creator and owner of this glyphosate residue-free label, says that the certification will enable food manufacturers to give consumers what they really want: glyphosate residue-free food. Now, there's been a lot of pushback in recent years with people understanding that the toxicity standards, the tests that they have for testing both non-organic and organic foods is very weak. Of course, if you're someone who's trying to sell organic, you're already having to jump through a lot of regulatory hoops. It costs a lot of money for farmers to go organic. For some reason, they really try to make it hard for the organic farmers to thrive in this country. But even so, with that, the toxicity testing is very low, very weak, and beyond that, you don't know what you're going to get in your condiments, in your salad dressings, your mayonnaise, even some of your most favorite snacks, and of course your cooking oils. So this company is trying to make it very easy for you to just choose right away and make sure that you are avoiding glyphosate and hopefully in the future some of these other insecticides that are hitting the market. We know glyphosate is the most widely used insecticide that is out there. Of course, this was the herbicide that was used for Monsanto's genetically modified crops. But something that was really interesting, in 2015, the World Health Organization labeled glyphosate as probably carcinogenic to humans. It's probably probably could give you cancer. Tasty. And so people they were just in shock at this. What are you saying? You're spraying this poison all over our foods. But right about the same time, another chemical company was right on the heels of Monsanto. And while all eyes were on Monsanto, Dow Chemical was coming up with their own genetically modified crops as well. And so they were creating their own herbicide that they would spray on their crops. Because remember, a lot of crops have become resistant to glyphosate, which means that these farmers were having to spray even more glyphosate on the crops. So Dow Chemical comes up with their own version of crops, which people haven't got their pitchforks out just yet to come after Dow Chemical. So the EPA, when all this is going on at the World Health Organization saying, yeah, you probably shouldn't be spraying that poison on your crop, it might give you cancer, they go ahead and approve Dow Chemical's herbicide blend. It was called Enlist Duo. And they said not only were they going to pass it through and approve this for use on their crops, but they also, the amount of pesticides that they were going to allow them to spray on the crops was just insane. Tons of pesticide that they were going to allow to be sprayed and get into the soil of our earth. It would spread to the water. So interestingly, thanks to a lot of pushback, the EPA was actually forced to revoke the approval of that Dow herbicide for their GMO crops. And in a court filing back in 2015, they said, the EPA discovered new information suggesting that the herbicide could be more toxic than previously believed. So, of course, this was due to a lot of that consumer-based pushback where people were saying, what are you thinking? You're labeling one insecticide as probably carcinogenic, yet you're granting access to another company to come and do the same with a whole new version of products that we haven't even begun to fight against. So, Environmental Protection Agency looks like they wised up a little bit, at least in this case, and that's, of course, due to active consumers out there who are pushing back against this stuff. But I wanted to draw your attention to some of these products. They've got a lot of, like I said, cooking oils, condiments, and snacks and things they have launched. But Heavenly Organics likes to point out how they support nearly 600 family farmers in India. They're helping them produce 100% organic crops. They hope to get up to about 5,000 within the next 5 years. And that's really key, because we saw over the last few years, 10 years plus, there have been a rash of farmer suicides in India. Now, of course, a lot of people wanted to say, oh, well, they had alcoholism or family problems, mental issues that weren't addressed. But a lot of people, a lot of social activists were saying, no, the common denominator here in 8 out of 10 cases was that these farmers were very indebted to these banks, because they were sold the story that if they went ahead and bought the GM crop, BT cotton and others specifically, that they would it would be a cash cow, and they would have these massive crops, they'd be drought resistant. So these farmers in India, this is their livelihood. They went ahead and bought this story and majorly indebted it to the banks, and now they are killing themselves in mass numbers. In 2004 alone, 18,000 plus farmers committed suicide. So this is just one more tool that you can use when you're out shopping. I really love the non-GMO project label. I'm seeing it everywhere now. For instance, I was just trying to buy some artichokes the other day, and there was about 30 different varieties on the shelf, and I was able to narrow it down quickly to just 3 brands thanks to this non-GMO project label. They also have an app you can download that makes it really easy to go shopping. So this is the power of voting with your dollars, pushing back against these corporations who see us as just a science experiment that's to be fed a steady stream of pesticides and frankenfoods. We are not a science experiment. We are humans, and we are reclaiming our power. And this glyphosate residue-free food label is just another victory for the consumer.
That's a great report, Leanne. And the point that you made in that about the farmers in India, I think, is something that is really important, that people don't realize the insidious business plan of Monsanto to essentially poison the ground for other crops. You can't grow other seeds other than theirs, and to genetically engineer seeds that cannot reproduce themselves, so that these people then have to buy these seeds from, once they poison their field, by using Monsanto on it. They say, well, look, we're going to give you these crops, and if you use glyphosate on it, then it'll get rid of the weeds, but it won't kill our crops. But then they poison their land, and then they can't even regrow the crops that they bought, the seed that they bought from Monsanto. So now they're in debt to the company store. They load 16 tons, and what do they get? Another day older and deeper in debt. And they get to the point where it becomes so egregious that massive numbers of them are committing suicide. This is the evil of this corporation that we're seeing here.
Right. And of course, to sell this as the miracle seeds that are going to save the planet and be drought resistant, and that all of these farmers are going to be lifted out of poverty because they're going to be able to pull in such massive amount of money with these miracle crops. And it's all a crock, basically. So we have many activists there, especially in India, working on behalf of these people to push back against them going in debt to the bank. The only thing they have is their land.
Yes.
So when you no longer have that,
and that's the core thing that we see here. We've seen it from the IMF, but we see this from all these monopoly capitalists, whether it's the people who want to control our transportation or the people who want to control our food. They want to own everything. They want to turn you into a renter. Even if you're a farmer, you got to rent your seeds from them. That's the way these people... Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight with Leanne McAdoo joining us from Florida via Skype. We're going to go back to Leanne in just a moment. I want to remind you before we do, we've been talking about glyphosate and the new ability that you have when you go to the grocery store to not only find out if something is non-GMO, but you can also find out if it has glyphosate content in it. And you'd be surprised at how pervasive glyphosate has become in our food supply. Making its way into all types of food. So it's a very important thing to understand. We just played a report on that. If you want to take control of your life, and it is very important to do that, if you want to take control of this country, support InfoWars and look at the first quality products that we sell. That's how we support this organization here at InfoWarsStore.com. We have a massive July summer special. You can try our products now. We have free shipping for the month of July. And in addition to that, we have massive discounts on some of our most popular supplements. Brain Force Plus, 30% off. Super Male Vitality, 30% off. Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine. Remember, they've taken iodine out of a lot of the products, including salt. They've reduced the iodine or eliminated it in a lot of brands of salt. So you want to make sure that you have that vital nutrient in your diet. You can get that 30% off Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine. Also, Gut Health Support Pack, 30% off. And InfoWars Select Storable Food. Remember, we have free shipping, plus now 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food. That is a huge discount because that's expensive to ship. Also, Secret 12, our vitamin B12 formula, is back and 25% off retail and free shipping. And DNA Force is back in stock, 20% off and free shipping. Free shipping on everything store-wide through the month of July. So take advantage of that. Take a look at the products that we have there. Get serious about eliminating contaminants in your life, things that you have already. We've got a lot of products that will help you to get rid of things like fungus and yeast. We have the all-new Myco ZX Fungus and Yeast Cleanser. So there's a lot of things that, some of them natural, some of them chemical. We have ways to help you eliminate that out of your body, but also to put the good things in that your body needs to support its immune system, to support its health. So take a look at the products that we sell at InfoWarsStore.com. Remember, free shipping for the month of July, massive discounts from 30 to 40% off our most popular products. All right, let's go back to Leanne. Leanne, we have an interesting poll that came out today saying that Melania Trump is more popular than First Lady Hillary Clinton was. I don't really find that surprising because, it was Hillary Clinton who took it upon herself to try to nationalize health care immediately after becoming First Lady. That didn't make her very popular in the eyes of many people. But the interesting thing about this is they said it's not uncommon for First Ladies to be more popular than their husbands because they're just there and they're talking to people. They're not proposing any policies that people get angry about. But with Hillary Clinton, it was the other way around. Bill Clinton was more popular than Hillary Clinton, and Melania is way more popular than Hillary Clinton was, and she's had her popularity going up, which is not surprising. But I think we had a poll earlier this week, Leanne, where Democrats thought that Hillary Clinton only had only 4% of Democrats believe that she could beat Donald Trump in a matchup again. That's the essence of this. That's why they're coming up with this ridiculous Russian narrative that we're going to talk about in the next section, is because people dislike her so much.
And that's why it's not unbelievable at all that she lost the election. But why is it so hard for them to understand? They put forward a really bad candidate. Nobody wanted her. And that's a really funny point you bring up about her. She wore the pantsuit in that relationship with to get in there and try to make such big moves like that as First Lady.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me. Melania is beautiful and she's feminine and she's smart, speaks several languages, so she's not afraid to
She always saw herself as an Eleanor Roosevelt. As a matter of fact, she was channeling Eleanor Roosevelt in seances in the White House. I mean, she saw herself as somebody who is going to be this great socialist, or they like to call themselves progressive, this great socialist campaigner, as Eleanor Roosevelt was. And it was absolutely amazing to all of us. They want to talk about Jared Kushner and the involvement of the Trumps in the White House and everything, but they weren't complaining about nepotism when the First Lady decided that she was going to take over this massive sector of the economy, far more intrusive even than Obamacare. Even Hillary Clinton and Pelosi came back and said, well, let's not try that again. Let's do it incrementally. That's the way that we can take this over. And that's really what Obamacare is. It's a first step in an incremental takeover to get us back to what Hillary Clinton tried to do as First Lady when she was first elected. When we come back, we're going to talk to Leanne McAdoo about the election. Like I call it, electspionage, because we have the spy agencies in America getting involved, hacking our election. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show, and that's appropriate bumper music, Mission Impossible, because we're talking about electspionage. That is the manipulation of our election by our intelligence community, by our law enforcement community, by people who are foreign spies. Christopher Steele working for MI5, Fusion GPS, a Russian front organization that put together the dirty dossier. They came after Carter Page, and now this is their third bite of the apple, coming after Donald Trump Jr. This is a very dangerous situation that we have here. This is far more dangerous than anything that Russia could do, what our own intelligence agency could do to us. And even people like Lindsey Graham are starting to get cold feet about it. I guess Lindsey's wondering what they've got on him. He was actually asking him when they were going for their reauthorization. They supposedly have to reauthorize this ability to eavesdrop. And, of course, they did that in a way that violated even that law that I think stretches the Bill of Rights beyond the breaking point, in my opinion. But with the FISA court coming out and saying they violated the law, had Lindsey Graham asking them when they looked for the reauthorization of that section of the Patriot Act, he said, you collecting information on me? Well, we can't tell you, Senator. If we told you, we'd have to kill your privacy. It's like if I told you this, we'd have to kill you, that type of thing. And that they need to understand that they are the prime targets of this. We've said this from the very beginning. If the people in Washington are not already too far compromised with their secret lives, they better get rid of this stuff, but it may be too late based on the crowd that we've got in Washington. I want to play and get Leanne's comments on this back and forth that Tucker Carlson had with someone on with a let's see, this is a Democrat congressman, I believe, or a congressperson. Anyway, we'll find out who it is when we look at this clip. I was looking at the back and forth that they want to punish the Russians for having RT. This is very similar to what's going on right now with the Gulf states coming after Qatar, saying we want you to shut down Al Jazeera. Why? Because Al Jazeera has been critical of Saudi Arabia and some of these other states. So that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing massive pressure being applied internationally to censor news media. That's why it's so important for you to stand with InfoWars to make sure that you don't give a monopoly of information back to CNN, back to ABC, NBC, CBS, those people who controlled all information in the United States prior to this. We don't want to go back to that situation. They're continually pushing on this. And so here's some way with Tucker Carlson pushing for Russians to be punished over having RT. And I want to get Leanne's comments after we're finished with this.
do about it?
Well, there's nothing we can do about it. Russian propaganda can do this, but what we can do is protect our democracy from it. And we can.
How can we protect our democracy
from
RT?
We can punish the Russians for what they did. We can impose
for having
sanctions.
a cable network here.
No, it's not a cable network. It's Russian propaganda that promotes false information that gets reposted on the internet, shared with viewers.
What role does Larry King play in this?
I have no idea.
He's like one of the lead anchors there. Is he? No, I'm sorry.
No, I don't know about Larry King's show.
Larry King's a Russian propagandist, is he?
Of RT, which is a well-documented Russian
are there any other news
propaganda
organizations
operation
that you think the U.S. Congress and the intelligence agencies ought to fight back against?
No, what I think we ought to fight back against is foreign.
They need to jail Max Kaiser.
Interfering with our presidential election.
I guess look, here's the concern.
We can't stop RT from existing, but we can punish the Russian government for having the audacity to interfere with our election.
Name a story that ran on RT that you think
there was a story about all of the money raised in the Clinton campaign or by the Clinton Foundation is used by the Clintons personally. The Clinton campaign is funded by the same sources as.
All right, okay. This is a Democrat congressman. His name is Cicilline, I guess is the way you pronounce his name. I've never seen this guy before. But he is in the mainstream of the Democrat Party. If you can't defeat somebody's narrative, you try to censor them. So they're going to lock up or shut down Lionel. They're going to shut down Max Kaiser. They're going to shut down Larry King because they can't handle a free market in information. That's always the tactic they take. You know, Leanne, when they had the demonstrations here at this abortion clinic in Austin, and people were there with signs talking about what abortion really is, and these counter protesters, quote unquote, showed up and they just had blank black signs to put over other people's signs. They had nothing to say. It was simply censorship. And I thought that was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen because it was a physical demonstration of what has now become standard operating procedure for the Democrat Party. Censorship. They no longer support free speech in any way, shape, or form.
Right. They're the only ones that are allowed to access the secret documents, and then they'll tell you what you need to know. So we need to shut down CNN because they are just a propaganda channel for the Democrats. I mean, we would have to shut down the BBC. It makes no sense. We know that maybe they're not funded directly by the government, but these are people who are definitely propaganda channels.
Well, it shows desperation because for the longest time we had, back when they just had the 3 channels or whatever, we had the CIA with Operation Mockingbird. People can look that up. It's a real thing. It's not a conspiracy theory. It really happened. Operation Mockingbird giving the talking points to the news media, telling them exactly what to say, and they would all just in line parrot back as mockingbirds, who would parrot back what the CIA and the government had told them to say. And they're very upset about the fact that they've lost control of that. And that's why their only response is, we got to find some way to shut down and control the internet. We've got to shut down InfoWars. We've got to shut down Breitbart. We've got to get the FEC coming after them. They already tried and failed to do the FCC, but I'm sure they'll come back. Some Democrat commissioners on the FCC will try it as well. But they're going to try every trick in the book to shut people down. And they're not trying to hide the fact that they openly want to censor everyone and everything, the internet and entire news media organizations.
Right. Well, and we see these intelligence agents are still infiltrating the media to push their agenda by leaking all of these stories, anonymous sources that feed the media the secret ledger or the secret dossier and all of these stories that turn out to be false when further investigated, but it's able to push an agenda, and the news media, the establishment media, will just eat it up. So we're still seeing a lot of the deep state work, the establishment work behind the scenes to leak stories that turn out to be false, but it doesn't matter by that time because it picks up steam. And as long as you're telling people what they want to believe, what they want to hear, then they're going to accept it as the truth. They don't need you to provide any evidence. You've confirmed their bias.
A good example of that broke today, because we had this story about Donald Trump Jr. now. This is about day number 5, I think, where they're putting this out. And so now NBC has dropped a new bombshell, they said. It's like, look, we have a former Soviet intelligence officer attended the meeting with Donald Trump Jr. But Zero Hedge reports, but there's a catch. They say that this is a bombshell, but actually this information has already been reported by the New York Times last week. So this isn't a new revelation. They're just dripping this out to try to keep this story going. And who is this guy? Well, he was a Soviet-born counterintelligence officer, but he immigrated to the United States quite some time ago. He is now an American lobbyist, and he holds dual citizenship in the United States. And they point out, ironically, we're just spitballing here, so don't hold us to it, but maybe, just maybe, this is Zero Hedge writing, bringing a lobbyist to a meeting in which your intent is to lobby for the overturn of the Magnitsky Act might just be something that makes sense rather than being part of a larger plot to rig an entire American presidential election. And so there is nothing, again, to see here. And that's what we have seen over and over again. We have seen effort after effort by these Democrat contractors, Fusion GPS, CrowdStrike, others, putting out a narrative that the Russians hacked this or did that. We see the dirty dossier stuff coming from Fusion GPS. We see John McCain shopping this dirty dossier around. We see the attacks on Carter Page. All this stuff, nothing has come of it. It has all collapsed. But they as soon as one of these things falls down, they bring up the next one, which just shows that they don't have anything, that none of these things have stuck, but they keep bringing more and more of them up.
Right, David. The fact that they spent $1.6 billion trying to get Hillary Clinton elected, they weren't able to come up with any dirt on President Trump with all that money. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive that they still have come up with nothing. And I was quite surprised to see the establishment trying to take these Donald Trump Jr. emails as the big evidence that they were finally looking for with this collusion with Russia, because that's a slippery slope. And that would start kind of peeling back the curtain to what do these campaigns, what do they engage in to get intel on their opponents? What sort of dirty tricks were the Democrats up to get Hillary Clinton, who has very low poll ratings, no one likes her, what were they up to try to get this woman elected? And as we see, you know, you poke that hornet's nest, people are saying, well, look what John McCain, he was so excited to get some opposition intelligence against Trump that he dispatched an aide to go collect this dirty dossier so that he could then provide it to the FBI and circulate it around the White House.
So they could try to hire this guy. And the FBI, meanwhile, takes another Democrat contractor, CrowdStrike. They say, well, you say that the Russians hacked your server? Oh, really? They did? Okay, well, we'll take your word for it. Could we see those servers? Oh, no, you're not going to show those servers to us? Okay, that's all right. We're the FBI. We won't bother with that. We'll just go away and take your word for it. And that's what is happening. So then they take the CrowdStrike narrative, and they have a hand-picked panel of sycophants come before Clappers, the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. And so they have this hand-picked panel of people from the FBI, the NSA, and the CIA come in. And he says, well, nobody objected when we gave them this report from CrowdStrike. So everybody agrees. And that's where we get the 17 intelligence agencies. The phrase came from Hillary Clinton, and these people parroted it throughout the election, which I think basically says that they violated the Hatch Act. They were obviously in office campaigning for Hillary Clinton, pushing this narrative along with many other things that they were doing. That's the thing that's very concerning, is how the intelligence and law enforcement community violated the Hatch Act, interfered in our elections, and violated their own laws, as pointed out by the FISA court itself.
Well, David, I mean, we know that they're very good at regime change. We've seen it happening all over the world to foment civil unrest and delegitimize their elected representatives, to throw them out so that they could install their deep state puppets in all of these other countries where they want to push for this globalism. We haven't really had to see that here. They haven't had to push for regime change here in the United States because they were always able to get their agent installed. But they can't do that now with President Trump. And that's why we're actually seeing people who need to be investigated for treason here in our country who are actively working to overthrow our president. President Trump needs to take the power and the ability that he has right now to investigate people like George Soros, who are actively supporting protests and paying for protests with some of his NGOs and organizations, not just in the United States, but other countries as well. We've seen that he's been very successful in other countries like the Ukraine, for instance. They were able to delegitimize Yanukovych there and get him out to put in their globalist person in the Ukraine. That's what they're trying to do here. They need to be investigated for treason. You're absolutely right. This is dire straits we're in. This is a dangerous time. And
we have George Soros organizing,
legitimizing it.
Exactly. We have George Soros organizing the overthrow of the government in Ukraine and working with the State Department. We have the quotes of the talking about how they contributed money to that. And then they come around and the Democrats are working with the Ukrainians in order to try to get opposition research on Paul Manafort and others to try to take down the Trump campaign. So they've done what they're accusing Donald Trump Jr. and the Trump campaign of doing, which they actually didn't do. They walked out of the meeting with this woman. They didn't get any information, but the Democrats spent a lot of money and did get a lot of information, and they overthrew other governments. And now they're trying to overthrow our government. And that's the thing that people really need to pay attention to. And it's one of the things that Trump's Justice Department needs to get serious about prosecuting these people who have violated the law, who have used their office in violation of the Hatch Act and in other ways violated laws by exposing people, by spying on people without a warrant, without a search warrant. The FISA court has pointed out how they broke the law. We need to do something about that. We can't allow people like Comey and McCabe to stay in office to escape punishment, and Hillary Clinton. Let's not forget Hillary Clinton. Hillary for prison. I mean, that has to happen. We have to have some kind of prosecution of these people. They cannot be above the law, especially with the criminal actions that they're doing. The longer they let this go, the more they're going to turn our country into a third world, kind of a East German Stasi state, which is really what we're looking at now with our law enforcement intelligence agencies.
You're absolutely right. It is projection. And they are trying to say that Donald Trump Jr. doxed himself because he released these emails. How could he just, that to me is something that an innocent person would do, who would say, look, here it is. Here are my emails. They wouldn't delete them and then use BleachBit to wipe their server just for, good measure.
That's right. Yeah. If you're in business, what is the good practice of somebody in business? If something happens, you do full disclosure and you do it right away. That's not the way the politicians play it. They like to hold on to this stuff to the very last minute. They like to fight you every inch of the way. But he's just doing what a person in business would do. He's doing what an innocent person would do and say, look, here it is. Look, there's nothing here. And there isn't anything there. And yet it's this constant drip, 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 just like they're saying, oh, look, now we found out that there was a guy who was a former Russian agent who was at this meeting, and he's lived here for a long time, and he's been lobbying people all over Washington, as has this Russian lawyer. There was a report from the Daily Caller talking about all the different people that she's had a relationship to. According to the Washington Post, she worked for years with Glenn Simpson, the founder of Fusion GPS. She's met and lobbied California Representative Ron Dellums as a hired lobbyist, okay? So she's worked with people that are involved in the California government, Jerry Brown and others. She was given the visa to come in. She was given she was denied a visa, and then they gave her an exception, and she stayed beyond the point at which she was supposed to go back. So she's actually here illegally at the time she had the meeting. And then a couple of days later, she is there in a congressional hearing behind a former ambassador to Russia, always with the Democrats. This woman is a Democrat operative, and that's the key thing. It was a setup. It was a trap to make him guilty, not even by association. They didn't really even associate with these people, but just guilty by his own proximity to this person.
Well, and it's just interesting that we have the establishment media won't follow that story. They won't follow that paper trail that continues to lead back to the Democrats, to their own corruption and collusion with the media establishment as well, colluding to try to get Hillary Clinton. It all circles back to them again and again and again. The only corruption that has been exposed here is on the side of the Democrats. And it's incredible to see how our free and independent press refuses to actually go there, to follow the money, and to report the news to the American people, the news that we can actually use to stay free.
Yeah, exactly. Let's take a look at, we'll take a look at what's happening with other news. We've got a guy who was investigating Clinton's emails. Somehow, looks like he had maybe a Clinton side. We're going to take a look at that, another suicide associated with the Clintons. We'll be right back with Leanne McAdoo. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here with Leanne McAdoo, joining us via Skype from Florida. She's been on extended leave of absence. Before we get back to Leanne, I want to remind you that we still have in effect our July Summer Mega Special at InfoWarsStore.com. Through the end of the month, we have free shipping store-wide on everything in the store, plus big discounts on some of our most popular products. Things like Brain Force Plus, Super Male Vitality, Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine, our Gut Health Support Pack, and InfoWars Select Storable Food. 30 to 40% off plus free shipping. Those other products that I just mentioned, 30% off. And then we have some of our other products like Secret 12, now back in stock after having been sold out for quite some time. That's our vitamin B12 supplement that you can take orally. Great tasting. You take it, put a little bit of it under your tongue. Use that instead of a painful injection. Get the same effect for B12 supplementation. That's 25% off retail. And DNA Force is now back in stock, 20% off. And that's a very expensive product for us to make. A very expensive product to buy, and a 20% discount off of that is a big discount, in addition to free shipping. So try the supplements that we have while we got free shipping, and take a look at those specials that we got, anywhere from 30 to 40% off some of our most popular items that we have at InfoWarsStore.com. Thank you for supporting us. Now, Leanne, we were talking in the last section about this lawyer, Natalia Veselnitskaya, who has worked for the Democrats for a very long time. We had Breitbart, Daily Caller News put together essentially a long list of people that she's worked with, Democrats, people like Ron Dellums, Jerry Brown, Howard Dean, Joe Trippi via a Democrat lobbyist that she was working with. Loretta Lynch let her in the country, made exceptions for her. She was in John McCain's office back in 2015. We see from her Twitter account that she opposed Donald Trump vociferously on multiple occasions. She also supported Hillary over Bernie Sanders. And she's worked with Fusion GPS. And now we have Fusion GPS's boss has looked like he was going to be called to testify at a Senate judiciary hearing. But he has said, no, I don't think so. I'm not going to do it. Isn't it interesting that people like this get to tell the Senate what they're going to do and what they're not going to do? Just like we had CrowdStrike, the DNC contractor that had their servers said, no, we're not going to show the FBI the servers. They're going to just take our word for it. Meanwhile, we got people like Roger Stone begging to clear his name, people like Carter Page begging to clear his name before these committees in Congress, and they won't let them do it. But the Democrats say, no, I'm not going to even come in. You can call me, but I'm not going to come in. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. They must be guilty because they want to speak publicly and clear their name. Yeah. Whereas other people who want to actually bleach bit their computers, they get to go run to be the president. It's incredible. We live in Wally world.
It's what we were talking about Donald Trump Jr. saying, okay, here's the emails. You think there's something here? There's nothing here. Here's the emails. Take a look at them. And now they try to make something out of that. Another thing that I think is interesting that broke today is an individual, Republican donor, an operative from Chicago's North Shore, who said that he had tried to obtain Hillary Clinton's missing emails from Russian hackers. He killed himself, committed suicide, another Clinton side, in a Minnesota hotel room days after talking to the Wall Street Journal about his efforts. It's kind of interesting. They said that he committed suicide. He was found with a bag over his head and a source of helium attached, an odd way to commit suicide. But even stranger, Leanne, is a note that he left that said, no foul play here whatsoever. I mean, it's like, move along, there's nothing to see. Nobody writes a suicide note like that, and nobody says this. Nobody says, I'm doing this because I'm worried about my life insurance of $5 million expiring. I mean, if you do that, then of course you're not going to get the life insurance. I mean, come on, this is absolutely amazing. We're out of time, but thank you for joining us, Leanne McAdoo, who is now in Florida, and we're going to be joined by Owen Schroyer in the next hour. Stay with us. I've got a news up break in just a minute.